Hello and welcome to this session. My name is Svensson and I work as a system specialist at Göteborgs Stad, city of Gothenburg, here in Sweden. And I've been using SCOM for about 10 years now and built a couple of management packs during that time. And also used a bit of PowerShell, of course, and I will be talking about integrating third-party systems into SCOM with PowerShell using a pretty simple management pack that you can have to build other solutions with once you got that done. It's for a good starting point. So let's dig into the agenda here, and I will be talking about third-party systems, what they are, and which one I've been using, and which you can use to enrich in SCOM with information from those systems. And then we'll talk about different methods of integrating to SCOM, and there are benefits with some and drawbacks with others. Just a bit around that piece, which I think is important, is to know the difference. And then we have, of course, PowerShell and API, and why you should integrate using that PowerShell. And this is what the session is mostly about, of course, and we'll be going deeper in that later on. Then we have keeping it simple, and that is just don't overdo things if it's not necessary, basically. It's easy to go a bit overboard when you're authoring management packs, but sometimes it's not that necessary, depending on what you want from different solutions and what the requirements are, of course. But yeah, keeping it simple. Okay, so where do I start then? That's an important point. If I want to make my own integrations, so where can I start? Depending on how much you know about PowerShell and management packs and authoring and that thing. So just a quick note on that one. Then we have the authentication bit that you need to do often in just talking to different APIs. You mostly need some form of authentication. So just a quick note on that and what you can do and what to think of. And then we have the specific management pack that I built for this example, for this demo, and I'm going to show you how I constructed it and how you can use it in your environment and get a good start. Okay, so let's talk a bit about third-party systems. What are they and what can you do with them? So third-party systems, it could be like vendor-specific systems, like different hardware suppliers or storage systems, etc. Those systems usually have their own management system where you can manage them, of course, but also get information, maybe status, performance data, alerts, and now can be a whole range of information. So back in the days, there were more vendors having specific management pack for SCOM. It's not that common today, unfortunately. So often you're pretty much left out on your own to do your own solutions. And the good thing is that there are ways that you can use. There's also other monitoring systems. There are APM systems, application performance monitoring, and synthetic monitoring. There's like real user monitoring, or there's a variety of words for different monitoring system, but these system often, or these monitoring systems often come with their own like dashboards and alerts, and they have rich information. But if you want to tie everything together in SCOM, it's pretty nice to be able to integrate with those systems. So we'll show you that also later on. Then we're going to talk a bit about different methods of integrating SCOM. There are a bunch of methods that you can use. There could be like SNMP, for example, traps. That's also pretty common, or were pretty common. And then you have other systems that can also maybe send mail. They can send webhooks and another thing if something happens, like alerts and stuff. Unfortunately, the SCOM out of the box is not that good in receiving those alerts and events from mail or webhooks, etc. So you're likely to maybe rely on a third-party solution to get that job done, or community solution maybe. And one thing I don't like about those solutions is that you have to rely on those systems just sending information. So sometimes you can't really tell if everything is okay, or that the system itself just has stopped sending you alerts for some reason. So that is why I like the API solution better, because and then you can query that API itself to know that it's up and running. So you are on a track to receive those alerts. And like most of the modern third-party systems has some kind of REST API, so you can query, and it's a bit more flexible, and it gives you also the opportunity to use more granular rules, for example, to query what you want. Maybe you only want like all the critical alerts, or a specific alert, or maybe you don't want a specific alert, so you can use PowerShell just to do some nice filtering in the output of what you want. So PowerShell, I've already talked about it. It's like once you learn PowerShell in general, and then you're already familiar with how objects and how PowerShell works in a whole, then how to manipulate the output of that the object itself. So then there are not that much code actually required to get information of an API. So you basically use invoke REST method. That's the way to go. And it basically just sends like HTTP or HTTPS request to a REST web service, and that returns the data. And then you have to do something about that data, with that data, of course. But it's pretty simple once you get a hang of it. talking about keeping it simple. It's hard to build a full-fledged management pack itself that have many different classes and relationships. And also, if it's a big management pack with a lot of workflows running, then you need to make sure that it's running smoothly and not taking a toll on the SCOM side. So if you're a good management pack author, that is usually not a problem. But if you're new to this, then the learning curve is quite steep. So so most of the time it's just sufficient to get alerts or state from a system itself. Then you can use that information to your SCOM end users and get that into the normal alert processing way that you have. Maybe you have an integration to an ITSM tool that you also need to use. So it's good to get that alerts into SCOM first. Then you can do like a heads up on that something has happened to a specific system, and then your SCOM users or those who consume the alerts can deep dive into their own specific monitoring system or a management tool, and to get more information. And that way you can minimize tool spread. To start with, at least just to have one pane of glass to look at, and it's a bit nicer. And like I said, if you don't want to build a full-fledged management pack, it's a little bit more advanced management pack, just to, if you get more than just the alerts, then you can obviously use that to reflect the state of objects and put that on some nice dashboards. Or better yet, if you have like an APM or synthetic monitoring system, you can use that information to build rich application dashboards reflecting availability of a specific system. And I will show more on that later on. So where do I start? Well, obviously you need to get familiar with PowerShell and learn the basics. And once you feel up to speed, then the best way is to start play around with different APIs and see how to connect and to gather data. Usually you will find good documentation examples from the different vendors. SquareApp has a pretty good blog in 2 parts with working with REST APIs that explains what you need to know and get a better understanding. So it's nice. It's a nice read up and to start with. And then you also have the management pack authoring part that you also need. And I think Kevin Holman's solution with fragments is it's a good starting point. So he has an article on how to get starting with authoring management packs using Visual Studio. You want to use that, and he uses a standardized way to build management pack using templates or fragments, so to speak. And he also has a fragment library that you can download and use for most of the scenarios required. So that is a good starting point. And the authentication, like I said, most of the systems you need to talk to has some kind of requirement to authenticate. And basically there are two methods of authentication. There are basic and access token or bearer. There are bearer token. There are a different name for it. Same solution. So the basic authentication is the easiest authentication method, where you have a username and password and send to the API. It's not that secure though, so you should prefer to use the access token since it's more secure method. So in my experience, this works using access token if you can generate a token that doesn't expire, or at least have a pretty long expiration time. Otherwise, you need to refresh that token, and it's a bit trickier to keep this updated in a scripting solution. So if you can't use that, maybe you could stick to the basic authentication instead. I also noticed that some system can generate an access token in their management GUI, which it's pretty nice. I will not cover that concept of authentication in depth, as it differs from API to API on how to authenticate to those. Usually there are pretty good information on the vendors' websites on how to authenticate to their specific APIs. But once you get an understanding on the authentication part, then you're pretty much on your way to get information out of the APIs. So the example management pack I'm going to show you is based on that I have a synthetic monitoring system where you can set up some real user monitoring tests. And for instance, one of those tests could be that you go to a website and that you log in with the user. You click on a link, read information on a specific page, and if you get the information you want, then you log out of the system. Now, if everything above works, the website is okay, the test is okay for that website, and if there's a problem along the way, the test will fail. And the management pack itself that we will build, or that I built, will connect to the API. It will discover the specific tests, and it will also monitor the API itself that it responds, and it will, of course, monitor the outcome of the different tests that are set up in that third-party monitoring system. And to get a little more in detail with the management pack is that I will build two different classes. I will build one local application class that uses a simple register discovery, and this is just to point out the server that should run the workflows to the API itself. And here I will also put a PowerShell monitor just to check if the API responds, so you know that it's okay. Then I will also build a second class as an application component class, and here we do a PowerShell discovery against the API is to discover the specific tests that are set up in that monitoring system, and then we will add a PowerShell monitor to check the outcome of the test. So that is the pretty simple management pack that we're going to build to get that information into SCOM. And I will also leverage or use SCOM Run as accounts to store just the username, password, or the token. In this example, we will just use a token. So I will only use the password bit, not the account name itself or the username. But I will show you the both parts in a way how you can use it, because sometimes you need to use the basic authentication, and sometimes you need to use the token authentication. So but you still use the same run as account in SCOM to store the credentials itself. Okay, I will just show you a demo of how it works, using showing you the Visual Studio project that the management pack is built with the different fragments, and also how it looks in the SCOM console itself. Okay, let's look at the management pack solution here in Visual Studio. So we have two different classes here. Here's the SCOM API, and it's built like a local application. Local application, and I have a simple registry discovery that just looks for a registry key, and if it finds that key, then we create an instance of that local application. And this is just to run the API or run the scripts rather on a specific server. So and on top of that, we have the monitor that checks the status, and we do that by running a script, a PowerShell script, and we send in the parameters for the run as account that we use, and it's specified here as a run as profile here. So in this case, I'm going to call it SCOMathon 2022 monitoring count. And if we look in the SCOM console, we do have a profile here. Here's the profile that's created in the management pack. And then we have the specific account here, the SCOMathon 2022 API. It's just a basic authentication account, or run as account rather. And we have the credentials. So we have an account name and the password. So in this case, we only use the token, and the token is here in the password. So although we do use both the username and the password in the management pack, I only use the password bit in the script. I will show you this also. So that's basically it for the run as accounts. So if we go back here to the for the monitor, so we had the user and the password, and going into the scripts, and the script for the API status is here. So like I said, we have the two parameters from the run as. I'm only going to use this one. But if you had basic authentication, then you would use both the user and the password itself. And on here you see on line 18 that I just defined the token variable, or assign it the SCOM password variable that I used, or as a parameter rather. And we also need headers to talk to the API. In this case, we want to use the token here as a bearer for authorization. And the content type we also need to set. It's set as application JSON, and then we have the URI to the API itself. This is not a real API; it's just an example that we use. So if we go down a little bit here in the scripts, you can see here that we're trying to connect to the API using the invoke REST method here. So all you need basically is you need the URI to the rel to the API itself that we had up here, using a get method to talk to the API. We need to specify headers, and the headers were here. We had the authorization here with the bearer token. The content type was the application JSON in this example, and that's about it. Then we get a status back here, or a status variable, where you can see if the API is responding in a good way. So if it does, we should get a timestamp back, and if we do, we consider the API okay. So if we don't get a match for the timestamp, if we get another, we consider the API like not responding, and then we send the result as bad condition back to the monitor. So that is the check API status script. We also have another class that we built that contains the actual tests of the synthetic monitoring system. And then we should use, or I use a discovery to run to the API just to discover all the specific tests. And basically it's using the same parameters here with the username and password from the runners. And then we have a test discovery PowerShell script. That's more or less the same. Just when talking to the API itself, we have the parameters here, and we define the authentication variables like we did before. It's a slightly different URL here, just to get the tests just for this specific API. And if we go down a bit, we connect to the API here with the same invoke REST method and with the same parameters itself. And we save that off in a checks variable. And then we do just a for each for all the checks. And we take out some information from the check itself, like what's the name of the check and the URL and so forth. And then here's it's a standard discovery that it creates instances of the different tests it finds, and then we send that back. So that's that. And then we also have the let's see here, we have the monitor for the specific tests, and it's also using PowerShell script to check those. And as you can see, we have the parameters again here. And if we check that PowerShell scripts, it's the same procedure here as well. We have the user and password. We have the authentication variables, and also the URL here. And then there's a bit more just to get that status that we want here, but it's the same here. We use the invoke rest method just to get all the checks in here, and then we check out here all the if we can get the right response for the URLs. In this case, we want to have a 200, 301, or 302, and if we don't get that, then we consider the response that it's not okay, and then we send that information back as well to the monitor. So that's the basics of the management pack itself. We will check out how it looks in the SCOM console. Let's see here. We have the SCOM-a-thon 2022 management pack here. So here's the API itself, and that was just the placeholder that we used to have a server that runs the discovery. That we point out through our register discovery. So it's green and healthy, and it's green because we had that specific monitor where the API status that looks for if the API itself responds in a good way. And then we have the specific tests here for that runs on the synthetic monitoring system. In this case, we have 3 different tests that are set up. So we have the squared up one, where we check the squaredup.com website. It's just a simple test, just if it responds or not. So nothing fancy. And it's the same here for the SCOM-a-thon website, and just looks at the URL and see if it responds like it should be. And we can check out the actual monitor that we're running. As I showed you in the management pack, we have a specific monitor for the test itself. And as you can see here, we have a good condition here that the status code that we got back is 200, so everything is okay. I also have a bogus website here just to show you that it has turned critical. So this URL doesn't exist, or it's misspelled. And as you can see, it turns red, and get a critical alert that something is wrong, that we can't resolve that website itself. And we also get an alert back here, as you can see, that respond to that monitor. Okay, that was the SCOM console. Like I said before, that you can, if you do a bit more advanced management pack that we have built here, we have the specific tests for different URLs, and that could be like specific applications that you have that you want to monitor, like a specific website application, and you can maybe run a more specific tests like login or something like that, and then you can use that in a distributed application maybe, or if you use like Squared Up, you can use that on a dashboard. So I'm just going to show you here in Squared Up that you can use that. So I have just a demo application here, and here we have a SCOMathon enterprise application or a distributed application that it creates. And as you can see, if I go here and edit that app, we have the availability monitor here. And what I did was I used an existing monitoring because we have that in SCOM already. And then I just looked for the SCOMathon test for the specific URL, like this one. And then I just save that. And then we have availability test that sits on top of that application if you want to build that one. So that is a pretty nice and pretty easy thing to accomplish if you want to have some nice views, and also use that availability reflection of the application itself. So that is one thing that we are using in-house here in Göteborgs Stad quite a bit, and it's pretty nice. And like I said, we can have different vendors that you can use this for. So this is just an example of one of them. Once you get the hang of the API itself, it's pretty easy to like copy the solution that you already built once, and you can do with us pretty much the same, more or less. You just have to change the URL of the API, of course, and often the authorization, if it's not the same, it usually differs a little slightly different. But once you get the basics done, you can copy the solutions pretty easily. And I would also like to a bit repeat myself, just to show you some sites and some tools as well. Regarding the APIs, I really do like the Squared Up blog with working with REST APIs, and two-part there, part 1 and part 2. That basically goes and explains what the REST API is and how to authenticate with it, and what you get from the results with all the JSON and arrays and everything. So it's that's a much a good read there, I think. Then you also have a nice tool, if you haven't used it before, called Postman, that you can download for free. and that is also a good way to explore APIs in a more graphical way. And it has a bunch of authentication methods, and it's a very nice tool to explore different APIs and to learn more about them. And finally, the management packs itself, where you have Kevin Holman fragments, and he also has a very good blog on how to start with the authoring of the management packs with his fragments library and using Visual Studio. That is also a must-read, in my opinion, if you want to start with the management pack authoring. Okay, thank you very much. That is all that I have for this session. I hope you enjoyed it, and that you have learned a bit more about how to integrate with the third-party systems and PowerShell, and hopefully you can start your journey, or if you already have done it, maybe you can get some inspiration. You can find me in the speakers cafe here after the session, where I will happily try to answer your questions if you have any. Okay, thank you so much.